Good morning, BuckTubers. You guys just can't get enough, huh? It's your boy Buck of Buck's Books, and as you may have gleaned by now, I have a passion for optimization. So this is the third consecutive day that I'm doing a book review, but there's a reason for that, and the reason for that is that I have all of these book reviews due before January 1st. Due, you ask? But Buck, you're a grown man. Why would you need to submit book reviews? It's an excellent question. And the answer that I have is that I impose these arbitrary demands on myself. And one of them is that I have to read a certain number of books for no reason, so I can review them on Goodreads, also for no reason. This is the 2024 reading challenge. I'm pretty sure I've done these reading challenges for like 10 years? I'll tell you in a second. No, I won't. And I'm not gonna, oh, yep. I started in 2015. So, yeah, very nearly. And I don't have a phenomenal track record, honestly. I only successfully completed one, and that's because I always set the bar way too high. But that's okay, because that gives you something to aspire to. That's the point of setting the bar in the first place. You don't grow if the bar is set too low. You're just going through the motions. So this year I intended to read 150 books, and I'm 130 deep, although technically I'm closer to 135 deep because I have all these books that I finished but didn't yet review. And now things are different. Now I just do little blurbs on Goodreads and do most of my reviewing here, which is actually much more time effective and a lot more fun. So that's how I'm trying to optimize this. But in order to do that, I have to crank out all of these book reviews before the end of the year, which means I have to do some of them before work at 6:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So today, I would like to talk to you about a book called Stop Walking on Eggshells, Taking Your Life Back When Someone You Care About Has Borderline Personality Disorder by Paul T. Mason and Randi Kreger. The first thing you have to understand is that if someone you love has borderline personality disorder, your life is hell every day. Everything is so bad, dude. Oh, you can't imagine how bad it is. If you've never had the experience, you literally cannot conceive of how bad your life is. But there is hope. And the funniest part of the hope, start from the top. I wasn't sure if I wanted to review this book. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to read this book. I am currently working my way through an actual therapeutic and academic treatise about using mentalization for the treatment of borderline personality, and it has been helpful. Briefly, it has been helpful in my therapeutic practice, but not overly helpful because, and that's the thing, I have a lot of clients with BPD, and that's because clients with BPD love therapy. They love it because it's an opportunity to just complain to a captive audience. And so you wind up with these people who stick forever, for years. They'll keep coming back, but they don't intend on making any improvements, and almost without, there are a handful. Like I said, I have a lot of clients and I have seen improvements in some, but for the majority, they just come in every week because they want to lament, just, woe is me. And when you offer them interventions, they say, oh yeah, I'll try that. And then they don't try that, because trying that might mean something changes. And a lot of times, especially with personality disorders, they don't want anything to change. Hey, it's enough out of you. It's too early for that. It's too early for anything. So I thought it would be in my best interest to start learning more of the methods available. DBT is the gold standard, and DBT does work, but DBT only works, it's like any other program. DBT works if you work it. And if you have clients or loved ones who don't work it, then nothing's going to change. And so I thought, what if there was another tactic? What if there was a way? What if there was what if there was, with mentalization therapy, I could trick them into doing the work? What if there was a way that I could sneak it under the radar so they're accidentally starting to think of other people as people instead of just objects on which they can project their fury whenever they have any moment of emotional dysregulation? And like I said, it worked a little bit, and then it didn't. So I found Stop Walking on Eggshells, and it told me that this book is one of the gold standards. Now, the gold standard, the one right now, the one that everybody loves, is I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. That is like borderline. That is the end-all be-all for understanding borderline right now. It's a pop psych book. It has been making the rounds for, it has to be 20 years. Stop Walking on Eggshells is a little more underground, but very well reviewed, and kicking around since 1998, when this sort of started to become epidemic. And I decided, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Let's find out. So, but what actually tilted me over, what actually made me decide to read Stop Walking on Eggshells in particular, was the reviews. And the reviews on Goodreads, there are a lot of people who are giving it 5 stars and just talking about it like it's a psych book, because it is a psych book. But almost all of the top reviews on Goodreads are women with unnaturally colored hair and unlikely names that they invented for themselves, who are giving them 1-star reviews. And just let me break you off a little piece. My heart stopped when I found this book on my now ex-boyfriend's bookshelf. He came home from work to find me reading it, and the expression on his face was absolute shame and horror. It disappeared the next day when he left for work, but the damage was already done. So just that, right? Leading with that imagine seeing the world like that all the time. And that's what borderline is. Just imagine conceiving of everything is this profound emotional assault on you. Something so innocuous as her boyfriend trying to better understand what the hell is wrong with her is perceived as not only a personal slight, but something that must be revisited by immediate explosive action on her part, and then going online to complain about it. as if the author did something to her. Here's another one. Oh, grossly insensitive and inaccurate. If you are someone with borderline personality disorder, I highly recommend trashing this crap and never looking back, or at least never reading the online reviews, here or elsewhere. You will find a boatload of people thanking God that they do not have to deal with anyone who has BPD. And okay, so yeah, dealing with is what it is, dude. And you're making that so obvious just by what it's like to read you. It's like to read your internet presence. I can't imagine what you're like in person. So the idea behind Stop Walking on Eggshells is actually, it is a means of attempting to ameliorate people with BPD from the consequences of their horrible actions, which is something that I sort of took issue with. I had a hard time with that because I'm a big reality therapy guy. I'm a big responsibility guy. I like accountability is everything. We have to own what we do. We have to. And Stop Walking on Eggshells, it talks about, obviously, what borderline is like, and it talks about the splitting, which is, for those who are not initiated, splitting is this profound, explosive black and white thinking, where one moment the person will just be normal, they'll just be walking along and having a human experience, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, they get de-escalated, and their perception just zeroes into this little pinprick. It's like, and the only thing they can see through it, it's like one of those boxes that you build to look at eclipses, and that is what they see. And the only thing they can point it at is their incorrect assumption about what drove the behavior of the other person who is trying to victimize them in some way. So they lose, in that moment, they lose all ability to conceive of any alternate way this could have shaken out. They lose all capacity to understand how the world works, how anything could have been if it weren't exactly what they think happened. And what they think happened can sometimes be delusionally divorced from reality. But it's like how a schizophrenic is not faking their understanding of the squirrel blinking in Morse code. Their brain tells them 100% that it is. They know for a fact, and anyone who challenges that is in on it, is part of the conspiracy. With borderline, it's the same way. If you try to challenge their faulty assumptions of the unrealistic conclusion they just jumped to, you are victimizing them further. You've always been against them, and that's the splitting. You were all good before, and now you're all bad. There's no middle ground. So the book explains that, and then this is what's wild to me. It offers very reasonable means of dealing with that. It talks about setting firm boundaries and defending them, which you gotta do. But if you set and defend boundaries, it will be viewed as a personal attack, because everything you do that makes what they call them, the BPDer, I think. The BPDer, in the book they're called BPDers. The BPDer uncomfortable will be you abusing them. You coming at them, why do you always do this, you monster? I'm sick of it. I'm not going to stand for it anymore. It's time for me to fight back. So imagine having that thought as if it was like the final climactic rally in a horror movie when the final girl finally picks up the axe handle, and they're like, no, we're gonna turn this around. So that's a very powerful moment. That's a rallying moment. So imagine if you, in your head, believed that you were having that rallying once-in-a-lifetime moment every single day. Every day you decided that you were going to just turn it around. Today's the day you turned it around, and you're not going to accept the abuse anymore. But you decided that yesterday, queen, or sometimes king, but disproportionately queen. Disproportionately. We gotta... Whoa. You've already made this decision. You've already been horrible. You've been being horrible. You can't... You've decided arbitrarily to fight back because your mother decided that they were going to Pizza Hut instead of McDonald's. It's absurd. No, it's absurd to me, but certainly not to them. So there's this moment and this explosion, and so you set the firm boundaries and you defend those boundaries. And in addition to that, you have to know when to walk away. And I think that's probably why everyone got so upset, all of these women with evident BPD who got so upset in these reviews, because the book says if they don't play ball, like if you do this, if you set these boundaries and approach them with empathy, that was very important. When they start to act out, you gotta just ice over emotionally and be like, you always do that. You never even cared about me. It seems like you're having a really hard time now. If there's anything I can do to make you feel better, please let me know. I just need you to know that it's not true that I didn't care about you. I've always cared about you. I'm still going to follow through with the thing that I said I was going to do, however, because it would be a disservice to us both to ignore the boundary because you're upset. And that's it. And that's what you're supposed to do. Now, I can tell you firsthand, it doesn't work. Okay, hold on. It works sometimes. It works sometimes. But whether or not it works, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You can never predict it, you can never count on it, which is why success rates for treating BPD are so low. And that's true of most personality disorders. They're very difficult to treat. They do get better with long-term treatment, statistically. What was strangest about the book is they included a lot of quotes, and testimonies from people with BPD, and they talk about their own experience just swinging like an emotional weather vane, and how they act out and do terrible things and punch holes in walls and cheat on their significant other as a means of getting back at them, and all of this stuff for like imagined slights, once again, because most of these things aren't anything but to suggest that they are overreacting, which they will be able to recognize in retrospect. If you suggest at the moment that they're overreacting, then you are invalidating them. And invalidation and abandonment is what BPD runs on. If they feel invalidated for any reason, then they will explode. If they feel like you will abandon them, that's the only leverage you will ever have, because abandonment is what all of this is about, unless they decide to abandon you first. It's immensely difficult to treat, and it has to be handled with kids' gloves, because there is also a statistically overwhelming tendency for BPDers to successfully commit suicide. More than any other mental disorder, they kill themselves. And it's usually like for attention, like because they make a lot of suicide attempts, but the suicide attempts are a means of emotional leverage in almost all cases. And the problem is they are not good at reining in impulsivity. So I think most of these successes are probably owing not to an actual desire to die, but to it getting away from them a little bit, Oh, I'll show him this time, and then, I showed him too good, And then there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube, depending on the route you take. But the route typically taken by BPDers is going to be attempted overdose or self-harm, like cutting, because there's just an enormous overlap there too. And that's the other thing. Suicide in any form is most often successful when drugs and alcohol are involved. And in people with BPD, drugs and alcohol are comorbid with BPD in like 50% of cases. That's astronomical. That's huge. I don't know if you're going to find that in any other diagnosis. 50%. So, quotes. They're taking these quotes from all these people with BPD, and they're saying things like, they expect me to, tell you what they're saying. My friends shame me for self-harming, but don't realize that just makes things worse. If I were overweight, would they follow me around and slap my hand every time I reach for a candy bar? That would make you feel bad. Yeah, that'd make you feel bad. But that would be an effective means of making you lose weight. I know that's unpleasant. I know it's not happy to hear that, but in this example, and I'm not advocating for shaming people for self-harming, please don't misunderstand me, but that's the argument made, and that argument doesn't make any sense. Because if you are acknowledging that the behavior that makes you feel bad, this stimulus elicits the response of you not eating the candy bar, even though you have bad emotions about it, this will ultimately result in improvement. So, the big disconnect in BPD is the mistaken belief that their feelings are the same thing as facts in the real world. How I feel in the moment is not the same thing as reality. How I feel in the moment is entirely localized to me, right? And based on information I receive and the filter of my perception, it can be spectacularly wrong. That's a quote from a Scott Adams book called Loserthink. And this has really stuck with me. He said, the thing to remember is that whether you are 100% right or spectacularly wrong, it feels exactly the same. And that's the thing that doesn't really show up that well in BPD. You know, there's but further in the book, it also talks about like the one woman was saying that when she's dysregulated, not fair for people to expect her to act reasonable, because in that moment that she's dysregulated, she is not behaving with an adult brain. You wouldn't expect a 6-year-old to be logical and rational. No, I think she said 2-year-old, because a 6-year-old could be logical and rational in some cases. You wouldn't expect a 2-year-old to be logical and rational when they're upset. And in that moment, why would you expect it of me? I can't suddenly get those 20 years because you're not 2. And that's just another excuse. So like a lot of what is in the book as quotes were just excuses for bad behavior. And I don't know if they were put in Don't Walk on Eggshells as a means of illustrating the tendency toward excuse making, or as a means of actually trying to get these excuses accepted as valid reasons for the behavior occurring. There's another one. I was having a meltdown, and my husband said, "You're not doing this in front of the kids. Come back when you're under control." And I realized he was right and reined it in, which means it's not beyond your control. You're just not sufficiently motivated, you know? So what makes it so tricky is it's just such a radically fluctuating needle, you know? Like, depending on where they're at on a given day, and there's really no rhyme or reason, there's only so much that you can do. You're gonna be walking on eggshells. And the reason so many people were so upset in the book reviews on Goodreads about Stop Walking on Eggshells is because it recommended that sometimes your only actual recourse is to get out of there. To protect you, to protect the kids. Sometimes even to protect the BPDer. It was a wild book. It was a good read. For people who are dealing with it in real time, I think you'd be better served reading something like Codependent No More, or even I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. But if you feel that you're stuck in one of these relationships and there's no way out, read this book, and I hope that you're wrong. That's enough for this morning. I gotta go to work like right now. Alright. Thanks, bookers. Buck bookers. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe if somehow you haven't yet.